Hey, I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Roles in the Family. Today we're going to be reviewing Twilight Struggle, an epic head-to-head simulation of the Cold War.
And even if you aren't a history buff that's particularly interested in the Cold War, we believe Twilight Struggle is one of the best two-player games of direct conflict that captures the tension of the theme while keeping a relatively low rules complexity. And if after watching this review you want to check out the game for yourself, we've got a link down below. But Ryan, let's jump into the review.
In Twilight Struggle, two players relive the tension of the Cold War over 2 to 4 hours, taking on the roles of the USA and USSR as they vie for influence across the globe. It is a tug of war that can either end prematurely if one side pulls far enough ahead, or progresses through the mid and late war to final scoring. As players play cards from their hand each turn, they will need to consider the timing of triggering specific events and strategically prioritize their actions on the map to make the most of the scoring opportunities throughout the game.
At the heart of Twilight Struggle is a tense, card-driven system that consistently presents you with agonizing decisions. This is primarily because each card can be used for its operation points or its event. But if the card has an event belonging to your opponent, it automatically triggers when you use the operation points. Since you are required to play all but one card from your hand during each round, you'll often be forced to trigger abilities that are very good for your opponent. The key question becomes, when do I trigger them, and how do I mitigate the impact?
Using operation points is extremely flexible, allowing you to add influence in any country within your reach, attempt realignment rolls to reduce enemy influence, or make a coup attempt for a chance to swing the influence of a country in your favor. With so many options, how do you focus your efforts? The key is found in the scoring cards that are shuffled into the deck. At the beginning of the game, only the Europe, Middle East, and Asia scoring cards are in the deck, so you know those are the areas to prioritize. But the shuffle of the deck has a huge impact on the order they are scored. You might have one of the scoring cards in your hand, which means you know that region will need to be scored this round. However, if you just start placing influence in those countries, your opponent will likely deduce that you are holding the scoring card and follow suit. There is a tense balance between improving your position in a region and not tipping your hand as to which scoring card you are holding.
Several other game systems feed into this tense interplay between you and your opponent. The Space Race track allows you to burn one card per round without triggering the opponent's event, while also gaining points and abilities for progress. The DEFCON track restricts actions as the risk of nuclear war increases, with the ultimate consequence of an instant loss if nuclear war is reached on a player's turn. The required military operations track pushes players to take a minimum amount of military actions according to the current DEFCON status, or sacrifice points to their opponent. All of these considerations feed back into the tough decisions of which cards to play, when to play them, and how to use your operation points.
Twilight Struggle is two-player only and especially shines with a consistent gaming partner. The theme comes through extremely strong as the various historical events on cards trigger, as well as the constant feeling of tension that the mechanisms evoke. Any game with shuffled cards and die rolls is going to have luck, but in Twilight Struggle, it is completely outweighed by strategy and tactics. There are players active in organized competitive play for this game that would no doubt wipe the floor with us casual players.
It doesn't get more interactive than this. Everything your opponent does affects you, and you are constantly trying to anticipate and outmaneuver your opponent. For such a long and deep experience, Twilight Struggle has a fairly quick setup. It is mostly seeding the map with the initial influence tokens and making some pre-game decisions about a few additional influence allocations.
Teaching the rules for a player to start playing is actually not too difficult. What makes the rules teach a little harder is how to help a new player understand some of the strategic nuances that you need to know up front to avoid major game-ruining blunders. It is great if both players have the same level of experience and can explore the game together, but if a more experienced player is introducing to someone new, it is a tricky balance to set up the player for success while not prescribing too many strategic considerations. While most of the influence on the initial map is the same from game to game, The shuffling of those initial early war cards and where the 3 scoring cards fall has a massive impact on the direction of the game from the very beginning, enough so that we lean more towards the setup variability being high.
At the beginning of each round, you look at a fresh hand of cards and a flood of strategic considerations start running through your head. Do I have any scoring cards? What are the odds my opponent has scoring cards? Which card might be best to play in the headline phase for its event? Do I have high value operation point cards that will help me swing control? Or do I have a weak hand where I just need to cut my losses and survive the round? How bad are the events belonging to my opponent? Which makes sense to commit to the space race or even just hold on to as my one unplayed card this round? The way the card play works, particularly with the triggering of opponents' events, creates such a rich strategic landscape that ties directly into the current state of the map, and the satisfying tension remains high throughout the entire game.
And that brilliant card system will always remain fresh and present new situations due to the randomization of the cards. Every hand is a unique puzzle and one that is further distinguished by the implications of the current state of the game board. As all the scoring cards enter play in the mid-war, tracking which ones are still in play and which are included in a reshuffled discard pile has a huge impact on how you prioritize your efforts across the globe.
That moment when the mid-war deck is added in round 4 carries an overwhelming feeling of scale, as suddenly the areas of importance have expanded from Europe, the Middle East, and Asia to the rest of the world. There is an epic game arc as you continue to fight battles on more and more fronts. Influence spreads across the map, and new mid and late war events are added to the deck. While the stakes are always high, as you can lose the game right away in the early war, the difference between the scope of strategy at the beginning of the game and the end really makes for a satisfying escalation.
Every mechanism in Twilight Struggle serves the theme, and every thematic element is boiled down into an evocative mechanism. It is one of the best examples of balancing strong theme and solid mechanisms while keeping the rules elegant and intuitive.
While the strategic considerations of remembering specific cards can be a pro as players become more experienced, for the average casual player, it is a bit of a deterrent to suffer drastic negative consequences simply because you didn't know a certain card was in the game. The most obvious example is the late war card War Games that allows a player to instantly win if the DEFCON is at level 2 and they have the victory point marker at least 7 points to their side. You simply need to know that card exists to avoid a very unexpected and unsatisfying ending to your game. There are other examples, such as cards that remove all influence from a country, that apply here. It can be a bummer to invest a bunch of operation points in an area just to have an event that you forgot about remove it all in one fell swoop.
While most of the actions you take in Twilight Struggle are not resolved using dice, there are some key actions, namely realignment rolls and coup attempts, and events that have you roll a single die to determine the result. The results on a single die roll can vary drastically, and there is no doubt that a bad die roll can have a massive swing on the impact of a given action. This is actually very thematic, as so much of actual war is unpredictable and not by the odds. But in such a strategic game, it can still have some sour moments when a player consistently rolls poorly or gets extremely lucky on a key die roll. And now, let's get to our personal ratings for Twilight Struggle.
So I want to first acknowledge that this is the first game where I have played it more than Ryan. So
this is true.
If you're listening here, I'm the authoritative voice here.
Yes, and for context, I think out of the 2021 plays, 19 of them have been together.
Yes,
two with my wife. The bulk of our experience, the bulk of the experience is us actually playing against each other.
Yes, but I clearly have more experience than you, so
I don't need to boast what our record is over this game.
Oh, please don't. We should don't put that down below. Good thing I'm the editor. So I'm going to be coming in with Twilight Struggle with a 9 out of 10. If I had to give an award to this game, it is one of the best combinations of theme with mechanisms. I mean, I have learned more about the Cold War in this game than my entire education leading up to it. Hopefully none of my former teachers are watching. because the entire game is events, right, that happened in the Cold War. But what they do when you play the cards, it makes total sense with what actually happened in the event. So, we'll have times now where I'll hear about, something from the Cold War in a different, maybe it's a movie or just someone's talking about it. And I'll actually have like some context about what that event did because of this game. And just all the mechanisms throughout the game tie in so well with the theme. And it just creates this incredible experience that I really can't think of another game that, especially a historical game, that combines these brilliant mechanisms with theme so well. A few other things that I love about this game, again, thematically, I love how different regions have kind of a different stability level to them. And again, that's very thematic with the Cold War. Europe, it is very hard to, overthrow a country. That's a very, and if you are able to, that is like a massive swing. Whereas, once Africa is open, I mean, we're just flipping, flipping it like crazy. And I've got 13 influence in one, and then it's 10, and we're just like this. We're just flying back and forth. I think that's so cool how different regions have different feels and the escalation of the game. Another thing is we mentioned it, the hand management in the game. I mean, that's really the core of the fun of it, right? And it's interesting because, every time I get dealt a hand, part of me wants to get dealt a bunch of just, my side's events, right? Because that feels like that's the best thing for you. But what's interesting is if you get dealt a hand of let's say a bunch of really good events for your opponent, and maybe even a scoring card for a region that you like don't want to be scored, that's also good.
Yeah, I'd rather control the timing
because
and
impact. You're mitigating the damage, and oftentimes that can be even better than if you got something all for yourself. I find that so interesting. So it's not this like, there's really, you get dealt random cards, and so there's a certain element of luck in that. But really, it's what do you do with what you're dealt with and handling that. So,
and it's also so interesting that you don't know what your opponent has at all.
I know.
So like I could get dealt a hand that I go, man, I've got low operation point cards. Like this is going to be bad because if I get into a war of just trying to like get influence, I'm going to lose because I just don't have enough points.
Right.
But you don't know that. Right? Like, and you don't know if I have a scoring card. And so there is kind of this poker face. It's in my best interest to kind of come across like I maybe have more firepower than I do, which is just a really cool kind of, it's very thematic with kind of the war and kind of keeping your opponent thinking you have more ability than maybe you do.
Well, and then you have a scoring card, and I can think of moments where it's like, man, if I just get a little bit more in this region, I could, get...
Yeah, you get greedy.
Is it control or what's the...
I think domination, control I think is the highest.
The highest. So maybe I'm one away from domination, but I'm like, okay, if I start playing there, that's signaling to you, and then you might start going, so how do you like do things and then kind of just sneakily, do what you're trying to do, man. It is such a game of like mind games. And
yeah, I mean, when you have a scoring card, you like look at your hand and you're like, with this hand, can I improve that area before I score, knowing that I'm probably going to be kind of showing that that's the area I'm interested in? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, maybe I just lead this scoring card right out of the gate, so at least it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah. So I think for me, the only kind of, negatives is, I mean, it's a very competitive confrontational game. So like, and I'm a competitive person. So we have had experiences early on in our days, immature Daniel, of this, when you lose. Ryan was, give some context, Ryan was a lot better than me at this game early on.
Yeah.
We're a little more even now, but early on, so I would lose in the early war pretty often. That is very frustrating. It is. You have this, it's like you're missing out on the most exciting part of the game. And so if you're playing this with someone, that the skill level's not even, that can really sour the experience. And so I think it is best, and it's good we've kind of gotten to a point where we're fairly even now, but that definitely is something you want to kind of watch out for when trying this game. But Ryan, I'm going to pass it over to you. What are you coming in with for Twilight Struggle?
Yeah, for me, Twilight Struggle is a 9.5 out of 10. It isn't actually the type of game that I tend to gravitate towards. And I mean, for some context, we haven't played hardly any war games, or kind of what would be categorized as war games. The only reason we ever got Twilight Struggle is because way back in the day, it held the #1 spot on Board Game Geek.
You had to buy it.
And when it's the #1 game of all time, you go, I got to try it. Like, you got to give it a chance. And I'm so glad we did. It became one of our, favorite go-to for this kind of niche of game. And I think it's a little bit of a shame that it's dropped since then. I don't know exactly where it is in the ratings now, if it's in the teens or the 20s, but it's dropped. And I think it's a little bit of a shame because there's a lot of people that aren't going to try it that would have tried it if it was the #1 game. That were like us, that would probably really enjoy it. Because I don't think you need to be into war games to really, really like this game. I don't think you need to be that interested in the theme we're evidence of that. We had basically no interest in the theme
about the Cold War
when we first got this game. But if you're looking for a game that's like head-to-head interesting epic conflict, this is my favorite one. It is my highest rated game in that category. And we've just had so many good games over the years. We've had the luxury of we've been pretty consistent gaming partners with it. So we got to start out completely new and grow in the game together. And like you said, that's maybe one of the biggest questions to ask yourself if you're considering getting it is, am I going to have someone like that?
Yeah.
Because if you get to the point where you're a lot better at it than the other player, it really is going to not be as fun of an experience.
Yeah. It's not,
and there's not,
it's not that the rules are necessarily hard. It's just, you have these tools, but when do when do I do a realignment roll? When should I coup? And even just thinking about DEF CON, there's just all these things that you're in the back of your mind trying to remember as you're going that.
Just the experience over time of just learning little things of how to, right now, the DEF CON's at 3. So if I do a coup attempt in a battleground, which will get me my required operations, it's going to lower the DEF CON, which now makes it that you cannot coup in any battlegrounds because otherwise it would cause nuclear war. And that's something that, if I was teaching the game now, because if I'm teaching it to somebody new, it is in my best interest to set them up as well as possible for it to be a good game. That's the type of thing that I'm trying to, explain, these are the things you want to think about. But it's impossible to, set somebody up in the same way that 20 games now have set us up with just experience. So it's an outstanding game from a design perspective. It is just sublime. It's one that I hope to maybe find, we don't get to play as often together anymore now that we live many, many miles apart. If you couldn't tell, the reason we're
just in separately. We're just in rooms next door to each other. We just don't want to.
But I would love to teach it, find some new people that could maybe learn it with me and play it. Cause this is a game I definitely want to continue exploring more. It's outstanding. And it's one of the ones that's been in my collection the longest, and it is held. It is held in my top games of all time and right about the same. The excellent stuff.
So good.
So we love it. We love it. But really the question is Twilight Struggle a game that you should check out?
If you don't like a constant feeling of tension as you engage in direct conflict, or you don't have a consistent partner willing to play a 3-hour war game with you, then Twilight Struggle may not be for you.
But if you want an epic head-to-head game that is filled with agonizing trade-offs and meaningful decisions, enjoy direct competition over control of regions, and want a deep game that will reward repeated play, you will be hard-pressed to find a better option than Twilight Struggle.
We've got a link to Twilight Struggle down below if you think this is a game worth checking out for yourself, and we've got a couple more videos right here, and we will see you in the next one.